I do want to go to the Patriot Mobile Newsmaker line. We're very honored to have with us a great American patriot, also the congressman from Pennsylvania, Guy Reschenthaler. Congressman, good to have you back with us.
Todd, thanks for having me back on, and thanks for playing the quintessential 1990s song, Little Miss Can't Be Wrong, as I come in. That is a great 90s tune.
Well, we have a great team here that puts all that music together. Congressman, when you hear people like Mitt Romney out there, and he's saying, we got to send the jets, it's time to call Putin's bluff. I'm curious, do a lot of Republicans agree with Senator Romney on that?
The Republican conference in the House, at least, is very split. And look, full disclosure, I'm much more aligned with the Lindsey Graham thought on this issue. We need to do something to make sure the Ukrainians can continue this fight. I'm in favor of having a no-fly zone. I think that we need to get the MiG-22s to the Ukrainians ASAP. It speaks volumes that the Poles were willing to give up their MiGs, and the United States ended up blocking the MiGs going into Ukraine. I think we need to do whatever we can to make sure Putin calls this attack off and defend our allies. Because, Todd, at the end of the day, this just isn't about Ukraine. You're already seeing Iran firing missiles into Israel. You're already seeing the CCP flying over Taiwanese airspace. If we don't blunt aggression from Russia, all these authoritarian regimes, all these communist states will continue to act out and attack our allies.
So Congressman, let's play out what you suggested, which is that no-fly zone. There are many people out there who say that is akin to a declaration of war, because that means we're going to have to shoot down any Russian jets that are flying over Ukrainian airspace.
Yeah, so how many more maternity wards need to get bombed before the United States get involved here? We're already sending them lethal aid in the form of Javelin missiles and Stinger missiles and so forth. So it's about time that we stop the carnage now by instituting a no-fly zone. And I believe that a no-fly zone over Ukraine would quickly end this war, or at least allow the Ukrainians to launch a counter-offensive and expel the invading Russia.
Right, and you asked a question to my question, which again, so a no-fly zone means we will shoot down Russian jets that are flying over Ukrainian territory. Is that correct? Is that what a no-fly zone will do?
That's what a no-fly zone is basically saying. The United States
Right.
and our allies are taking control of the skies. No hostile force is allowed to come into the airspace. But we need to do that. Again, we're seeing human carnage, suffering on a scale that we haven't seen like this in Europe since arguably World War II. We just can't stand on the sidelines and allow
how do you know that,
ally.
Congressman, and I mean this sincerely. I mean, based on the reporting that's been coming out of Ukraine, most of it has turned out not to be accurate. So how do you know that we have seen this amount of carnage? Are you seeing this firsthand? Are you getting these intel reports, or is this just coming from the media?
No, it's coming from closed sources and open sources, but it's irrefutable that the Russians are targeting civilians. You can turn on any news outlet and see
doubt about that.
See the destruction. So look, what's the number of civilian deaths that we're willing to accept? What about the refugee crisis, where we have I believe it's over 2 million Ukrainians that have already left for Poland, Romania, Moldova, and elsewhere? What about the cost of that? Look, at the end of the day, it comes down to this. Are we going to allow an authoritarian regime to attack unprovoked an ally of the United States? Or are we going to step in and push back on the invading force? And again, this isn't just about Ukraine. It's also about what we do when the CCP invades Taiwan. It's how we handle Iran when they're shooting missiles into Israel. If we are not respected as a global superpower, we are less safe, and so are our allies abroad less safe. We need to act, and we need to act now.
The same question could be raised about the Uyghur people who are actually that is an irrefutable genocide happening there, and the United States is not involved there. So, Congressman, to your point, how many Uyghur children have to be slaughtered before the United States takes action?
Well, Todd, I've been very, and by the way, please just call me Guy. But I've been very vocal about what's going on in China. It's just not about the Uyghur population. It's the suppression of Christians, the Christian minority. the Tibetan minority.
Sure, but how many? All right, so fine. How many Christian children? No, I understand where you're coming from, and I think we're on the same page here, Congressman. But you brought up this point, and this is the argument when people bring in the children, and again, it is a horrible, reprehensible thing that if in fact the Russians are blowing up maternity wards, and we would like to believe the information coming out of Ukraine, but there's been so much misinformation, we genuinely do not know what to believe and what not to believe. And I suspect a lot of the American people feel the same way about that. They want to be able to, and we do stand with the Ukrainian people, but there's so much misinformation and propaganda coming out. It's hard for us, the taxpayers, the folks that are footing the bill and sending the troops over there, to understand what's really going on.
Well, I can tell you that Russia is attacking civilians. We have a humanitarian crisis again. I stand by the fact we haven't seen a crisis like this in Europe, at least since World War II, and we've got to do something now. To talk about what we're going to do with China. China's a huge problem, and it goes beyond what the Uyghurs are doing. I would like to see the same woke corporations that pulled out of Atlanta. I would like to see them pull out of China. It's inexcusable that you have Nike, Coca-Cola, et cetera, sponsoring the Olympic Games, arguably buying products that are being shipped to the United States that are made with slave labor in Western China. And yet those woke corporations have the nerve to then lecture us on making sure people have to have an ID when they vote. So we can start with economic pressure and also internal pressure on these woke corporations that have sold us out for cheap Chinese labor, and also have sold out our values to the Chinese Communist Party. We can start there with China. But in terms of the hot war, we have really a cold war going on with China, whether we'd like to admit it or not, going on right now. What we have with Russia is a hot war between one of our allies and Russia. So let's focus on Russia right now and get lethal aid to the Ukrainians, get a no-fly zone, and allow the Ukrainians to fend off the Russian invaders. Let's use economic pressure on China and those Chinese Communist Party sympathizers that are in corporate America as well.
On the Patriot Mobile Newsmaker line, our good friend from Pennsylvania, Congressman Guy Reschenthaler. Congressman, back to the issue of the no-fly zone. Do you think the Biden administration is going to do something? Because I don't. I think they're using this as a ruse to force this Green New Deal garbage down our throats with high gas prices. That's what I think is really going on here. Otherwise, they would have already taken action.
Look, I wouldn't let Joe Biden walk my dog. That's how much trust I have in this guy. Secretary Gates put it best in his memoirs, where Joe Biden has been wrong on every major foreign policy decision of his entire career. We can go back to Vietnam when he said that we shouldn't accept refugees, the so-called boat people from Vietnam, that we shouldn't accept them. We have no obligation to them. He was wrong then. He was wrong with Afghanistan. He was wrong. He said not to kill bin Laden. He wanted to divide Iraq into 3 separate nations. I could go on and on with how many times Biden has been wrong on foreign affairs. He's certainly wrong now. And the sad part is the Biden administration sees this as an opportunity to blame Putin for inflation, blame Putin for the rise in energy costs, blame Putin for everything that's going wrong domestically in the United States. The American people are too smart to fall for that misdirection from the Biden administration. But they seem to have this let them eat Prius attitude where, woe is me, you're paying more for gas. That wouldn't be a problem if you made over $100,000 a year and drove a Tesla. They are out of touch and using this, you're right, as an excuse to try to cram down the Green New Deal policy. As who pays the price for this? American workers who have to drive to work that don't have the luxury of sitting at home on a Zoom all day.
All right, Congressman, we're going to have to leave it there. Appreciate the frank conversation here, and we'll see what happens. It seems as though something new happens every couple of hours out of Ukraine.
Well, Todd, thanks for having me on. Always like coming on with a conservative blowtorch. I'm still holding you to the fact you've got to take me to get barbecue next time I'm in.
We'll make that happen, Congressman. All right, now, thank you for that. Congressman Guy Reschenthaler from Pennsylvania.